It's time for All Hands on Tech.
Climb on board as we explore all the amazing things happening in Nova Scotia's tech sector. Each episode, we'll chat with local experts to uncover the secrets of what makes Nova Scotia the best place for collaboration, innovation, and creativity.
All Hands on Tech is proudly produced by Digital Nova Scotia, the industry association for Nova Scotia's growing tech sector. Welcome back to All Hands on Tech. I'm Ashley.
And I'm Claire. For more than a decade, our guest today has changed the way organizations have connected, collaborated, and shared ideas using technology. Ignite Technology started in Calgary, but has since expanded across Canada, including right here in Nova Scotia.
Ignite has grown from a company of only a few to a team of more than 80 people who have been especially busy these past few years helping companies adopt new practices and tools to allow for remote work. So to talk more about what that work looks like, we're thrilled to have Chris Jezzard, an account executive with Ignite Technology, joining us today. Welcome to All Hands on Tech.
Thank you, Claire and Ashley. Appreciate you having me on the show today.
We're so happy to have you here and to get to know kind of you a little bit more and what the work you do at Ignite Technology is. So maybe let's just start there. For folks who haven't heard of Ignite Technology before, what exactly do you do for your clients?
Well, Ignite Technology has several disciplines within the organization. We started off as a collaboration company. And so when I say collaboration, I mean audio-visual boardrooms, meeting spaces, unified communications like phone systems and contact centers. So there was that discipline. That's how it started. They saw an opportunity in the market where there was a gap, not a lot of reliable or stable implementations of that. So they started off in that area. And back in 2018, we branched into cybersecurity. Mm-hmm. And then most recently in 2021, at the end of 2021, we acquired a managed services company. So now we offer that discipline as well. So
you do a lot.
We do a lot,
Yeah.
yes. Yeah, we do pretty much full service company.
Okay, very cool. We do have some more questions for the work that you do, but first we want to get to know you a little bit better, Chris. So maybe, Claire, let's start off with some rapid fire questions.
All right, sounds good. So Chris, work from home or in person?
Mostly from home. I do visit a lot of clients on site, but not a lot of office work, no.
Do you have a really cool home office?
Yes,
You
I
decked it out.
actually.
I love that.
It is. It's great. Dual monitors, TV, the whole works.
Nice.
So-
Nice.
So work from home is your preference.
It is my preference,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
Definitely. I have no problem going into the office,
course.
but working from home just makes the most sense.
Yeah.
I'll talk a bit about working from home, I think, in general a bit later.
For
but
sure.
Yeah, it's preferable.
Okay.
Have there been any casualties working from home? You see those broadcasters and their kids come in the
Oh, yeah.
background with their dogs or
Zoom meeting.
anything?
Cat.
Ah,
Yeah.
a classic.
so
I have
bad.
2 cats, and they, for some reason, the only time they're interested in making an appearance is when I'm on a call. So yeah.
That's hilarious.
I just have to say it's my assistant helping me out,
I feel like those are usually well received. Pets are well received.
Usually,
For
yeah.
sure. Yeah.
Amazing. Love that. Okay. Have you ever been on the dark web?
Have I ever been on the dark web? No, I avoid the dark web.
Good answer.
Do you know anyone who's been on the dark web?
No, but I suspect I've met a few people who might be from the dark side.
I love it.
I'm so curious.
Yeah. Okay. Favorite app?
My favorite app?
Yeah.
I think right now, Slido, I think right now. Just I've been using it more and more lately, so.
I don't know what that is.
Yeah, I
What's
don't know.
Slido?
Slido is an app from Cisco that it lets you enhance your presentations,
Oh, okay.
conduct polls and things like that within your presentation. It just makes
Cool.
for a much more impactful presentation. Sometimes the PowerPoints can be a little less than fun.
Yeah.
Right.
So Slido gives you a way to kind of enhance your
Oh, I'll have to
presentations.
check it out.
Yeah, check it out, definitely.
Fun. I love that.
And the last one is a little bit Nova Scotian inspired, but do you have a favorite hiking trail here?
A favorite hiking trail? I'd have to say that would be Gaff Point, which is at the end of Hurdles Beach in down towards Kingsburg, outside of Lunenburg.
Oh,
Never been
I
Yeah.
love it.
Oh, you got to check
I'll
it
have
out.
to check it out.
Yeah, it's fantastic. It's a bit of a hike just to get to it, but you walk to the very end of the beach, and then it's a spectacular trail. Takes about 45 minutes to an hour to get around it. And there's also, if you know the way, there is a secret beach.
Ooh,
And you have
we
to-
love a secret beach.
enticing.
You have to rappel down a rope to get to it.
Okay, that's a little intense.
Is there like a rope there?
There is, yes.
Oh,
Did you install
I think
it?
it's still there. I didn't
Did
do
you
it. No. No.
You might be the only person to know about this.
No, there's a lot of people. Well,
Well, someone installed it. So
most of the locals know, and
Yeah.
and more of the tourists know now that they're hard.
now
part's
even more
finding it,
people are
right?
going to know.
That is, yeah, we may have ruined the secret here.
Yeah.
What a great answer.
I love it. Okay, well, now we'll get into some more hard-hitting questions. Ignite began as a company helping others reimagine their workspaces. So your company probably never foresaw a global pandemic coming 10 years ago that would totally change office structure. What impact did that have on your work at Ignite?
Yeah, I don't think a lot of people saw the pandemic coming or the eventual impact it would have on the workforce in general. For us at Ignite, we're primarily a remote company, so we do have staff located in offices across the country, but our workflow wasn't really adversely affected internally because of our remote work. We were already geared up for it. But a lot of the companies that had implemented some form of remote work over the course of the pandemic, this was all new for them, right? It really forced a rethink, I think, of how businesses deploy their workforce and introduced a lot of new challenges, cybersecurity among them. They were also challenged to implement collaboration spaces with hardware and software that they hadn't previously used as their part of their daily workflow. So, I mean, it's easy to start a Teams or a Zoom call. I think a lot of organizations kind of gravitated towards those apps. But there's a lot more to a collaboration strategy than just implementing a Teams or a Zoom call. So that was part of the challenge, right? It's not just boardrooms to consider, but huddle spaces, hot desks, whiteboards, team spaces, messaging services, web sharing, phone systems. All of that goes into a good collaboration space, right? So, the challenge for us really internally was to react effectively to that with the increase in activity in that space. So with companies looking for expertise in implementing new spaces or upgrading existing spaces, right? And we're still seeing that today. We're still very busy in the collaboration space, as even though we're kind of back to normal or the new normal, whatever we're calling it now, companies are starting to plan for the future. So
You mentioned the new normal. So, what are you seeing? What do you think the future of office structure is? Do you think everyone's going to remain remote? If there's going to be a slow trickle back? Like, what is kind of your idea of the new normal? What do you think it's going to be?
Well, yeah, a couple of good questions there, and definitely related. So the future of office structure is definitely changing. We're seeing some businesses reduce the number of individual offices and increase the amount of meeting space, huddle spaces, et cetera. In some cases, we've seen a complete flip of the office structure from maybe a 70-30 ratio of offices to meeting spaces to a 30-70 ratio. That's a bit extreme, but I've seen that. I've seen companies reduce their footprint from 4 office floors down to 2 or 3 because they're reimagining how their workspace needs to be. But to do that, you need a plan, right? And that plan starts with the second question, which is whether everyone's going to be back in the office or work remotely, right? And so the answer really lies somewhere between, right? There's going to be a combination of both, a hybrid activity, right? So businesses need to have that workforce plan to deal with remote workers. And it's not just about facilitating a new office structure, but to me, more importantly, to attract and retain talent. Right, workers, especially younger workers, expect options when it comes to flexible working hours, the ability to work from home. The pandemic kind of escalated that issue of workers requiring a better work-life balance, right? So the businesses with a progressive plan, they're going to attract and retain better employees than organizations who don't have a plan, right? And expect people to return to the office regardless of their ability to work from home, right? And I look at it like we used to measure productivity by the hours you kept in the office and coming in early, staying late, right? That's what the boss noticed. We need to measure productivity by business outcomes, not by physical presence. So that's kind of where I see things are heading. There's nothing wrong with a hybrid approach, right? But there needs to be a reason for bringing people back into the office. In my last position, I went back to the office and I sat there and I did Zoom calls.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
in my closed office with the door closed. It didn't really make a lot of sense. I mean, the other people I was Zooming with were just down the hall, but none of us were meeting in person. So it didn't make a lot of sense. Really what you need to have is with in-person meetings is you need them to be meaningful, right? So there's meaningful meetings where there's, a clear agenda, relevant information, trackable outcomes involving the people that are there. So there's that part of it. As we like to say at Ignite, you need to earn the commute, right? And that's for the employer. You need to earn the commute. If someone's going to spend 30 to 60 minutes a day one way coming to your place of employment, it's got to be worth their while, right? So another consideration would be intelligent meetings. So not just meaningful, but intelligent, meaning bringing that technology into the space, whiteboards. You can transcribe, record, use apps like I mentioned, Slido, include remote participants and local participants. So that's pretty much the norm these days. There's not too many meetings where you don't have both, right? So those are the kind of things you need. Meaningful and impactful meetings. Bringing people back just for the sake of it really could lead to lower morale, poor productivity, and poor business outcomes.
So based on your clients then, I mean, I know you can't predict the future of what it's going to look like, but do you see, like you said, it's somewhere kind of in the middle? Are most people kind of sticking with the hybrid?
I think a hybrid approach is what most companies feel comfortable with. Although I don't necessarily see a great plan there. I don't know what I see mandates. Oh, you got to come in Tuesday, Thursday, and then one day is up to you. You got to come in 3 days a week. And I look at that and I go, well, what happens on Tuesday and Thursday? That's so magical. I mean, is there a reason for coming in those days?
On the flip side of that, do you think that you can, I mean, there's lots of opinions on this, but build the right culture? Because we talk a lot about company culture. Do you think it's possible to have the same company culture and be at home?
I think you can. I think it's a combination. You can do things with collaboration spaces like in WebEx and Teams and tools like that where you can actually build. And I know internally here at Ignite, we have different spaces that bring people together. We've got a lot of musicians. So there's a space for musicians to congregate. There's a space for people who like scrapbooking. There's a place for people who like Seinfeld. So it just brings people together and allows them to exchange ideas or funny memes, etc. And then, but you got to combine that with in-person events as well. So we do a lot of those across the country regionally to bring people together, whether it's a golf tournament or a picnic, a hike, whatever it is, to bring people together. It could be a business event, it could be a personal or a social event. So you got to do both, really.
Right. I want to go back we talked about the pandemic, and I'm just curious at Ignite Technology, because you were helping make workspaces work with technology, right? So like office spaces, boardrooms, things like that. So when the pandemic hit, I mean, can you talk a little bit about how your client needs shifted and were you guys prepared for that?
I don't think we're 100% prepared.
Yeah.
And we're still catching up today, and we're still hiring people in the collab space as business increases. And I think we've got a better handle on it now, which way it's going. And like I said, it's we're seeing still activity in the boardroom space, but we're seeing a lot of activity, say in huddle spaces, hot desks, right? So people that just you might have 6 or 8 hot desks in your environment. People just come in and plug in when they're in the office. There's no need to have a specific office for everybody anymore, right? So that's really what's changing, is that kind of office structure and how it's laid out and giving people the ability to work from home. But when they come in, giving them some tools. So huddle spaces, they might be on a project with 2 or 3 other people. They don't need a full boardroom. They just need a space to go and collaborate. And maybe plug in and maybe somebody's remote. Maybe there's somebody in a different office on the other side of the country. They need to bring that person in. So they need that kind of technology to kind of go in, have a huddle space, do some brainstorming, and have a better business outcome at the end of the day.
All right. Yeah, it looks a lot different than it did just a few years ago, eh?
Definitely.
So we understand your opinion on working from home. Working from home is great. But it could obviously open the door for some security risks that wouldn't necessarily exist if everyone was at the office. What do businesses need to be thinking about and keeping in mind with workers at home, in a lot of cases in different countries?
Yeah, that's a great question, because there's a good reason to be concerned with the increase in cyber attacks, especially over the pandemic. If you're not properly protected, there's a real risk of compromise. But that doesn't mean we should act out of fear, and we've seen some of that out there. That usually results in not spending your money wisely.
Yeah.
So,
Quick fixes or
yeah, exactly. Rather than we like to say here at Ignite, we use a non-fear based approach to security. So, you don't want to have wasteful spending or a lack of plan. So what you really need is education and planning. And that's crucial to developing a cybersecurity program and a roadmap that's going to lead to cyber maturity. And there's a couple of terms you're going to hear a lot of, or you probably have heard a lot of, is like cyber resilience is one of them, in your organization. And how do you do that, right? How do you get cyber resilience? There's a few different ways. So we could be thinking of things like security policies and procedures. Right? Do you have that in place? Do you have a disaster recovery plan? Do you have a business continuity plan? And the difference there is disaster recovery is more technical, business continuity is more operational, right? And cybersecurity user awareness training. Are your users, end users, properly trained? Are they on the lookout? Are they helping you create that culture of cyber resiliency? It has to go right down. It has to be top to bottom in your organization, right? So it really needs to be, cybersecurity really needs to be treated as a business issue. It needs to be embedded into your business functions, act as an internal part of your business operations. And that's how that's part of how you attain cyber resilience, right? And I think the start of it's really having a security assessment done. And once that security assessment's done, it creates, you get kind of a gap analysis, and it allows you to figure out, what needs to be done for an organization, right? And then we can start implementing those policies and procedures and building you a roadmap to attain cyber resilience.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that was my question. What would be like your number one tip if someone needed to like up their cybersecurity game? But yeah, maybe doing that audit or
I think
assessment.
an assessment makes the most sense up front.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be the best money you've ever spent because it's going to give you that view into your own network that you never had before. And we base it on a security framework. So we'll go in. We have our own, but there's some industry standard frameworks out there that you can use. NIST, ISO, the International Standards Organization. There's several of them. We can use any one of those, or we can use our own Ignite security framework, which includes about 120 controls that we use to determine policies and procedures that need to be implemented. That's the start. Right?
Mm-hmm.
That's what helps you create that gap analysis and gives you the ability to create a roadmap to cyber maturity. A lot of that goes hand in hand with what we're hearing also out there is zero trust. So that's the other word you may have heard a lot of lately, zero trust. What does that mean, right? Zero trust is zero trust network access or zero trust architecture, the two kind of terms you'll hear. And so the network access part is just initiating certain practices to create a stronger, more secure environment. So things like strong identity management practices, right? And that includes people, systems, devices, everything. So you're identifying everything on your network, right? Utilizing the technical term is microsegmentation. We just call it subnetting in the field. So splitting your security perimeter into smaller zones. Right, that's going to help you manage your network so you're not exposing all of your resources in one big global network. You've got it chunked down into smaller zones, and you can better protect that critical data or resources, right? Multi-factor authentication. Huge.
So
I think we're all used to that one.
so annoying.
It is.
You never know whose cell phone it's.
I know. It can be, but it's huge right now.
Yeah.
And it's one way to implement a part of zero trust, right? And the concept or the principle of least privilege. That's another one. So when you're accessing resources and setting this up, don't give access to people that at a certain level if they don't need it.
Mm-hmm.
Like execute and write privileges and things like that don't need to be given to everybody for everything, right? Lock it down. And so that's called the principle of least least privilege. So that's crucial. Also, validate your endpoints. It's surprising how many companies out there don't even know what endpoints are on their network. So you can validate your endpoints Don't trust any devices that have not been verified. You can pre-enroll devices. There's a lot of tightening you can do at the endpoint level to secure your network. So these are things that you can do in part. One or more of them. You can do all of them if you did like I'll throw another acronym at you, SASE.
Ooh, I like that one.
That's a fun one.
SASE, that's a good one, right? It's actually SASE, and it stands for Secure Access Service Edge, and it just helps unify your SD-WAN environment, your network security point solutions into a centralized cloud-native service, right? So if you integrate that into your network, and there's some considerations there, but it's going to give you the features of a lot of what we just talked about. It's going to roll all of that into one package in a cloud-native environment that gives you a user admin control panel that you can use. It just simplifies a lot of things, tremendously. So that's going to help you contain any breaches, right? If somebody does get through, you're going to have all these zero trust initiatives implemented, and so any damage they could do would be mitigated, right? So some people say to me, "Oh, I've got VPN, I'm okay." It's like, yeah, VPN's good, right? It's better than nothing. But against zero trust, they're really kind of on opposite sides of the spectrum, right? And VPNs generally take an all or nothing approach. Once you're in, right? You've got more or less global access. But that opens you up to like a lateral attack, right? And then if that happens, the bad actors got pretty much carte blanche on your network, right? So zero trust, even if on the other hand, it gives authorized and authenticated users limited access to resources based on a need to know kind of level, right? So if they do get through, their chances of damage are a lot less, right? So what that means is, it does provide zero trust provides a better outcome for sure, but you don't, you still use VPN. For instance, with VPN, you can implement subnetting. So when you're VPNing in, you're going into a subnet that has only certain resources on it. So even if someone hacked you, they can only access that part of your network. They're not going to be able to get to other parts. So you can start implementing zero trust on a kind of an incremental basis. You don't need to go full hog necessarily, but again, it's all part of having a plan, right? So
it can sound a little overwhelming, but that's where Ignite comes in, I'm sure, is you can kind of help companies implement a lot of these things that you just mentioned.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And for a lot of companies, there's a stat from Gartner that says by 2025 that at least 70% of new remote access deployments will be served predominantly by zero trust. As opposed to VPN, and that's up from 10% at the end of 2021.
Right.
So it's with the way the industry's going, right? And it's a much more complex setup, so you need help. Most IT departments are challenged as it is, so definitely having a good IT company on your side is going to help for sure.
Do you think that, this is often a scenario of people don't know what they don't know? That all these kind of different solutions you're rhyming off, like I wasn't familiar with a lot of them.
Yeah.
And, I work in this space, so it's.
I know.
Do you have to advocate a lot for cybersecurity, or do people just come to you and they're open minded? Like, how does that kind of
you get a mix? People are more open minded these days because they're hearing a lot of horror stories. You see it on the news, read it in the papers, and all that, and it's not, if it hasn't made an impact, it should, but usually a lot of people have heard it from their peers, right? And I think that's a lot of it's peer driven. They're saying, this happened to us. And, it's maybe a CIO or a CEO talking to another CIO or CEO, and they're hearing these stories directly, and it's making an impact.
It's not just a headline anymore.
It's
not often enough.
It's actually personal. It's your cohorts that are coming to you saying, we had an issue. You guys need to, be aware and be protected, right? So that's driving it. I think there is more openness to it, and a lot of companies though still view IT as a line item expense, right? So that's holding some people back.
Right.
But that's why you need a plan, right? Because you don't need to flip the switch and do it all at once. These things can be done incrementally over a period of time, and that fits in with a budget, right? And that's crucial too, right? So you don't have to go from 0 to 100 in 5 seconds flat. So.
Well, maybe not as exciting, but let's talk a little bit about cyber insurance? Because obviously with, more threats and attacks on the rise, that's something important that we need to think about. So kind of what's happening in that world and what do businesses need to do and to know?
This actually is driving a lot of people to the table.
Okay.
Cyber insurance. Oh yes, definitely. It's if they weren't thinking about cybersecurity before, their insurance company's making them think about it. It's the insurance premiums have skyrocketed in recent years, 2-3 times or more higher than they were just a couple of years ago. And there's too many claims, too many unsecure networks, essentially. So most, if not all, the insurance companies are now requiring detailed questionnaires and surveys of your network environment before they'll quote a rate. So they'll require proof that certain things are being done on a regular basis to receive any kind of discounts, right? So some requirements might be like a vulnerability assessment. So you would run that regularly, maybe monthly. Some companies run them weekly. I mean, you'd run it at least quarterly, if not monthly. Penetration testing, or some people call that ethical hacking, right, where you actually pay a company to come in and just try to break your network, right? So they were actually requiring sometimes that once a year.
That'd be kind of a fun job.
It would be, wouldn't it? It's not a cheap endeavor for companies. But,
I'm sure.
But that cybersecurity awareness training. Do you have it on your network? If you do, you'll get points for that and cheaper rates. So that's really crisis management planning would be something else, right? That they would want to see. So there's a whole list of questions that they have. And depending on your answers is going to depend what kind of cyber insurance premiums you're going to wind up paying. So a very important topic these days.
Yeah, if you weren't thinking about your cybersecurity before, you were after.
As soon as you see the insurance bill, you're
Yeah.
like, wait a minute.
Yeah. Oy.
Yeah, exactly. So
Very interesting. When did cybersecurity insurance even come about?
it's only been around for a few years, not
Okay.
long, right? So some insurance companies saw an opening. Oh yeah, let's do cybersecurity. We can make some money at this.
Totally.
And the first year or so was okay, and then when the pandemic hit, of course, the breaches started to come fast,
Right.
And furious, and next thing you know, they're doling out a lot of money to companies, and so now they're clamping down, and it's become a lot tighter. It's more of a mature industry now. That when it first started, it was kind of like the Wild West. Now it's
Right.
maturing a little bit. So now you're seeing some controls put around it, and if you and the thing about it too is if you have a breach, they probably won't give you insurance again.
Oh boy.
That's
Is it kind of like
It's not-
car insurance in that way? Like the more accidents
Well,
you
with
have,
car insurance, yeah,
your rate goes up.
At least they'll keep insuring you, right? You might pay more, but in this case, a lot of them are just denying. They're saying
Wow.
you had a breach.
That-
You're not going to get it with us. You might have luck with somebody else.
And maybe that's just
Interesting.
because, like you said, it's so in its infancy that maybe they can't afford to keep.
Well, and
you
basically what they're saying is if you're not going to secure your network the way it needs to be secured,
Right.
you're not doing all the things that you could possibly be doing, then you're not worth insuring,
Yeah.
essentially.
Wow.
And is cyber insurance something that every business should be thinking about getting, or more like the large organizations?
No, I think it doesn't have to be just the large ones.
Yeah.
It'll be it's small to medium-sized businesses too. 50 seats, 100 seats, 250 employees, whatever, definitely. There's a lot of companies out there that don't have insurance. They're taking a risk, but
Right.
sometimes that's part of it too. You take a mitigated risk that you won't get hacked, but if you do, how do you respond and how much money is that going to cost you?
Right. Super interesting.
Lots to think about.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
So, what about businesses that are looking to offload their infrastructure and applications to a cloud environment? Is there more risk there? What should people be aware of when doing that?
Yeah, great question, because that's another area that's quite active right now, people moving things to the cloud. There's a few different types of clouds, right? I think everybody knows the public cloud because we've dealt with applications like Office 365, et cetera. And that's essentially an environment where you're in a multi-tenant environment. So you share physical servers and all this back-end infrastructure with other companies, right? Then there's private cloud, which is essentially the same thing, except it's the hardware and software, everything's dedicated to your environment, right? So it's a private cloud. And then there's hybrid, which is very, very popular these days. Essentially, taking advantage of the public cloud along with some on-premise activity for various reasons. And that might be because you just don't want to upload everything all at once, or because there's certain data or things you want to keep on your own on-premise. Maybe there's client requirements or compliance issues. So there's a hybrid, and I think a lot of people fall into that category, right? There's also multi-cloud. That's just people using several different cloud providers. But so those are a few different types of clouds, you know. And one thing to remember, security is a shared responsibility on those. There's certain things that will always be part of the provider's responsibility, and certain things like identity, user access, and identity management is going to be your responsibility. So that's important to remember. Some important things to consider. Well, again, I think we're sounding redundant here when I say let's have a plan.
Yeah.
It's essential, right? You need to have a plan before you can just say, oh, let's just move that up to the cloud. Let's just go get Office 365 or whatever. I mean, and that might be a great solution and your first step maybe, but it's got to be part of a larger plan, right? So again, working with a company like ourselves, you know, to build that migration plan and roadmap. Right, there's a lot of things to consider. If you're going to move to the cloud, you want to properly vet your service provider. And I'll put a little plug in for us here too, that we are also a service provider. We do provide cloud services, so you can actually put your data into our cloud environment. So It doesn't have to be one of the big players. We all know who they are, right? But,
would you say it's the most secure?
The most secure? Well,
can you measure that?
Against all of them? There's a lot of factors that go into that. But yeah, we build security into it as well. Everybody does, right?
Right.
But security is one of those things you want to vet, right, with these companies, right? Do they have, is the data secure? Are they meeting compliance? Do they have airtight backups, recovery strategies, redundancies, all of those things, right? People need to understand the terms and conditions. Right, and the SLAs that are in a service provider agreement. It's amazing how many people get into these things and then they want to move their data and find out it's enormously expensive to get it out once you've put it on their platform. Right, it's you got to be careful with things like that. Some of these platforms are well-known targets too, so you got to make sure that you're still doing what you need to do with access management and security controls at your end, user awareness training. All those things don't disappear just because you're in the cloud, right? So overall, I think there's more advantages to being in the cloud, or at least in a hybrid environment, than being solely on-premise. It gives you the opportunity to leverage your existing infrastructure. So some of this infrastructure's still got life in it. You've paid money for it, so you might as well keep using it at least till its end of life. And in the meantime, you can start moving certain things. If your company's growing, then you can use the cloud to your advantage, in that you don't have to scale up on premise. You can scale up in the cloud. So that's less CapEx, right, and less investment. So, but the idea, that, of course, is that it's only going to work if it's implemented properly and within the framework of a well-defined roadmap, right? Because it could be a year or two of incremental change where you move certain things to the cloud while keeping certain things on premise. So, yeah, there's a lot to it.
All right. Well, lots of great information there. We're at our last question, which is not totally a question, but, the floor is yours. Is there anything new and exciting happening at Ignite Technology that you'd like to share?
There's a few things. How much time do we have?
Oh, you let us know.
If you want.
Yeah.
Well, I'll try to be brief.
Okay.
Video intelligence is one of the things we're working on. Ramel Mendoza, one of our partners in the company, he's working on a project out west that is going to designed to use retail networks, video surveillance networks, to their advantage by implementing video intelligence. So, think about things like you can track foot traffic, dwell times. You can integrate into wayfinding signage, display signage, even into your POS, right, to gain insights into what the customer's doing in your store, right? Are they leaving happy? Are they interacting with your staff?
What's the look on their face?
Yeah, what's the look on their face? Are they happy, sad? Are they yelling?
So interesting.
There's a lot of things, and with the the ultimate goal is just to unlock value, right? Either money made or money saved, right? And it's most retail stores have some kind of surveillance network these days. So if you can use it for intelligence, not just surveillance, you're gaining, right? And with the growth in the IoT sector, the possibilities continue to expand in that area. So Ramel's working with that, and hopefully over the next several months we'll see something come out of there. The other big thing we're doing is Ignite Health. So I didn't talk about that at the beginning, but we have a separate entity called Ignite Health, and so essentially, we're currently involved in a number of projects within the healthcare space that we see a lot of opportunity for our expertise there, right? So we're working with several health institutes and primary care networks on digital technology initiatives. We're also working in the dental industry as an integrator and managed service partner. The vision is essentially to be a leader in providing integrated digital health solutions, right? We're focusing on utilizing affordable technology to reduce isolation and improve patient wellness. We're helping address some problems like staffing challenges, as I mentioned, the seamless integration of all these multiple technologies, right? The security and privacy of data, and to address the rising operational costs. I think we all know what's going on in the healthcare industry these days, exacerbated a lot by the pandemic, of course. And so we're working with a couple of entities here, Canadian Sports Institute and the Prostate Cancer Centre out in Alberta. And we've done a lot of work with them bringing their technology together. We're also working with the Prostate Cancer Centre on their 30,000 square foot new facility, so we're working on the infrastructure for that, and also for some of their remote screening and telemedicine. They have what's called a man van that they send around for prostate cancer, right? And it's a great idea, but it needs to be connected, right? So we're working on stuff like that. In addition to that, we're working with the Ontario Ministry of Health. We're partnering with Cisco and a software company called LaunchCode to utilize or create what we call the Autonomous Living Project. And the goal there is to utilize technology in a way that connects residents, family members, and caregivers together, enables adults living with autism or Down syndrome to live more independently and autonomously. So that's called the Autonomous Living Project. So we're not just an integrator, we're an innovator.
You do it all.
Pretty much.
You don't do.
Well, and I was going to say, it sounds like you're doing some cool projects that kind of like started off like where you were at with Office Space, but then you're also entering some new territory, which is exciting.
Absolutely. And we've expanded, like I said, into cybersecurity and now into managed IT services. It's opening a lot of doors and a lot of in-house expertise being applied to other projects now as well. So it's great. I look at our mission statement, and I think that's if we're running out of time here, I don't know, but I look at our mission statement and I'm not going to read it, but I'll just tell you the 5 values that are in it for Ignite, and this is kind of what we stand for, right? People first, teamwork, innovation, doing the right thing, and humility. And people say, well, wow, I haven't heard some of those. Some of them I've heard before, right? But some of them I haven't. And, I mean, doing the right thing is really, we'll always do the right thing for the customer. If that means saying, listen, this isn't in our wheelhouse, but we know a company that it is, or we can give you a couple of references, then we'll do that. Right? It's not about just selling anybody anything just for the sake of it, right? And the humility part really struck me. And when I was interviewing, they also mentioned humility. I've never been asked that or talked about that during an interview, right? And it's just, we don't go around beating our chest saying, oh, we're the best IT company ever, and all that. It's, we don't know. When we go into a company, we don't know their environment, right? I'm not going to walk in there and say, oh, yeah, I know exactly what you folks need. I need to understand that company first. I need to exhibit a little bit of humility and say, hey, listen, I don't know your environment. Tell me about it, right? So it was interesting. I just thought that was a great thing to add into the discussion because it's really about people first. We like to hire the most technically proficient people, but it's if that person is not the most technically proficient, but they've got other attributes that in terms of teamwork and being able to work, create those relationships, because we're not just creating relationships with our customers, we're also creating relationships internally, right? So that's very important. Very important, right? So we're out to get the right people, and it's a great environment. I mean, if as we add to our staffing, if anybody's looking for a great environment to work in, Ignite
Oh, that's a good
Ignite
plug
Technology.
to end on.
I totally, I would totally advocate submitting a resume and going through an interview process with Ignite. It's unique. Yeah, great place to work.
Yeah, well, love to hear it. It sounds like obviously you've got a great team and you're working on some really fun projects. So we're definitely going to keep an eye out for all the exciting stuff that you guys are doing.
Oh, I appreciate it. And it's great that there's organizations like Digital Nova Scotia, who we work closely with, and the Halifax Chamber of Commerce. That's these organizations are a great benefit to the companies here in Nova Scotia. So it's a pleasure to be a part of it.
Well, thank you.
Thanks for coming.
No,
This is wonderful.
Very welcome. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for tuning in to All Hands on Tech. Interested in learning more? Visit us on our website at www.digitalnovascotia.com. We'll see you next time.
This
has been
a Podstarter
production.